Hello, ladies and gentlethems. I've been alerted to a certain chart that shows the sales of each and every limited character in a timeline sort of format. Now, there is a common pattern here, and you could see that the sustains don't really sell well. I just want to hammer home first that this is just speculation, and this data is not giving the full context because this is just China, and if you actually look at the fan base spread, that definitely plays into it. What is popular in China may not be popular everywhere else, and that may balance stuff out. But we are going to run this video in the assumption that this chart is true and correct. Why do sustains just not sell well? And we're gonna call this the Huohuo dilemma because I feel like she encapsulates a lot of the weaknesses as to why sustains don't sell well. First, we have to say, like, why are sustains important? Why is pulling a 5-star sustain actually important? Well, quite simply that you have less resets to do it. If you have less resets, you're less frustrated in running MOC and PF. It's just a very nice quality of life to have a stronger sustain on your roster. The second reason is that the lowest DPS loss is 0 HP. No matter how strong your DPS is, if they're dead, they will not be doing any damage. And lastly, people die when they are killed. I just put this in because it's a Fate reference and we're gonna have a Fate collab. I can't believe that's happening. That was a joke, but it is true that sustains are just very, very strong for all of these reasons. Why are people skipping sustains? Or more specifically, why aren't they vertically investing in them? Because people might be pulling sustains, but they might only be stopping at E0. And these other characters, people may be going for E6, and that's why they're so high. Let's go into external factors. You know, it doesn't affect sustains as a whole, and it can't affect anybody else. So let's go into external factors as to why sustains don't sell well. Banner placement. It doesn't matter how strong of a character you are. If people are stuck in a rock or a hard place and have to make a really tough decision, then you're not gonna sell well. As you can see, Sparkle is a very strong unit actually, but she didn't sell well because she was right after Ruan Mei and right before Acheron, facing the barrel of a meta support that a lot of people were pulling, and Raiden Mei. She was not gonna have a chance of winning, and so is Black Swan, even though both characters are pretty popular. People were not pulling constellations on them, or eidolons, I mean, excuse me, Genshin brain. People were not pulling eidolons on them because they were planning for Acheron and the anniversary. And the second external factor is story reliance. There's a couple of characters in this game that just show up out of nowhere, and that really hurts them in their banner sales because they don't have any hype. We don't know them quite well yet, and the biggest amount of sales that you see in a banner is usually the first 7 days. So if they don't get to know the character by that point, then it's already going to suffer. Even though your kit is strong, if people don't know who you are, then that will really hurt the sales. Now let's go into specifics of why sustains don't sell. This is the meat and potatoes that you've all been waiting for. The first of which is you don't need all of the limited sustains. Most of the value of a sustain is to keep you alive, and that's basically it. The rest are just bonuses. You can still put Huohuo in any team that doesn't need her energy regeneration and attack buff because she keeps people alive. Same with Aventurine, even though you don't need his damage, even if his damage is cut, he's still sustaining, that's all you need. Same with Fuxuan, just because you're not using her crit rate buff, you're still using her because she sustains your team very well. So there's very actual little incentive to pull more variety of sustains. Once you have 2 limited, you're pretty much set for life. It's a very instant win button. The second thing is that enemies doing less damage isn't really fun to watch. When you have eidolons invested in your sustain, usually what it entails is either more damage or more sustain, and if you have eidolons that do more sustain, it's not very thrilling to watch compared to having really big numbers. And only sustains really have this problem. The DPSs in this game usually just get straight up damage bonuses. It's always a bigger number. But for sustains, it's a bit split half and half into more damage and more sustain. And more sustain is not very fun to watch. Third reason, eidolons are usually for bigger damage increases. But for sustain specifically, the extra damage bonuses that these eidolons bring is still not enough to match the big whale damage one-shot comps that whales bring. Even if you invest E6 into Aventurine, he's still not going to be doing as much on E6 DPS like Boot Hill or anything. If you had to weigh the options of having funnier numbers, then you're not going to invest too much into Aventurine, but you're going to invest more into Boot Hill because you want to see the big pew-pew numbers. And the brain rot of gacha will tell you that, yeah, you know, it stimulates your neurons to see bigger damage numbers, but not necessarily lower boss numbers on you. Fourth reason is that non-whale light cones for abundance specifically are extremely very strong, and same with preservation. In the abundance's case, it's a lot more extreme. You have multiplication, and you have a lot of really good 4-stars that are also free. Even if you are considering whaling, the fact that multiplication exists kind of puts you in a position where I don't really need this light cone, do I? Or even if you're looking at a sustain in the future named Lingsha, then you could just use what's that light cone called with Gallagher? What is real? The variety of light cones in sustains is just so good that you really don't need to pull any more of the signatures. You're spending less on sustains. Lastly, past a certain point, sustain is not important anymore. If you have E6 Kafka, do you really need an E6 Huohuo? The enemies are gonna be dead before you even get to see the sustain in action. The extra sustain from your eidolons just doesn't matter because everybody else probably has better eidolons and probably is killing the enemy before it ever takes effect. And I feel like this is the biggest reason as to why sustains just don't get pulled very much. Is because if you are a person that pulls a lot of constellations or eidolons, well, Genshin Brain, sorry. If you're a person that pulls a lot of eidolons, then your DPSs are probably not gonna need a sustain because they're just doing too much damage for it to matter. I hope you liked my speculative video. Wow, how many months late was this? It was an anniversary, but yeah, I do have some speculation about how good Lingsha's banner sales will be, because a pattern here with sustains is that there's no actual waifu character, and the closest you get is Fu Xuan, and she's like a small chihuahua type of character. Lingsha looks a lot more like a seductress, and she's a dragon girl, so I think she may sell well just based on waifu alone. I'm very looking forward to how Lingsha will succeed in terms of sales, because I feel like she's a very big exception to what we have right now. And considering the leaks of her light cone and how much she scales with eidolons, it's gonna be very interesting to see. But yeah, that's all. Do all the algorithm stuff, and see you guys later. Bye bye.